All right. Hello. This is Mark Delacroix, hopefully coming to you live and audible on both twitch.tv and YouTube. Um, we do stream in both places, and if you basically miss part of this video or have to leave early, the video will be archived permanently, for as long as YouTube exists, I guess, out on our YouTube channel as well. I am live and audible and captioned. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I apologize if my voice sounds a little rough. I had my lovely nieces and nephew visit, and they, while being absolutely wonderful, did leave me a parting present in terms of germs. So it's fine. We'll get through it. I may take more breaks to grab drinks and things like that. I just slammed the entire thing of throat coat tea. I mean, licorice tea is actually kind of tasty. All right, let me switch this up. So this is the second of the streams, as you can see there on the streaming schedule right there, for August. Basically also at the end of this week. Hi, hello. Also this week we have on Friday, starting at 1:30, the Lorelink players will be tackling the Cosmic Birthday campaign. Which is, those are interested. That one, basically the Starfinder Second Edition Playtest adventure. So, basically, ironically, the note there at the bottom represent the product and development may not represent the final product. Technically, I'm using it to refer to Lorelink, but may also refer to, may also refer to Starfinder Second Edition as things are being tested, they are throwing things, and they have been known to significantly change things. Pathfinder Second Edition showed that they do listen to the playtest feedback, and they strengthen things, nerf things, and try to make things, on the whole, a little bit better. Hence the reason why the playtest comes out a full year before the actual system is released. It should be released, I believe, at Gen Con next year, I believe is the official release date. And so I don't know if they actually have announced its official. Yeah, I think it is 2025 in that. But in any case, that's not to say that it is just a half-baked thing. It's basically obvious that they put a lot of work into this. If you're curious about how the systems work and the history of Starfinder, and all of those things, go check out the previous video on the YouTube channel that I just talked about. Basically, part one, I spent a lot of time talking about the history of Starfinder and Pathfinder and how that all kind of leads into Starfinder Second Edition and what that means. And a little bit, and then towards the end of it, I start talking about running that in Lorelink, which Lorelink is the tool you're looking in front of us. So if you're joining us for the first time because you stopped by because you see Starfinder on the tag, hi, hello, welcome. Glad you can stop by. Lorelink is a campaign management tool which is designed to make running your games just a little bit easier rather than having to search through notes or PDFs or Google Docs or spreadsheets. You can instead, wow, Streamlabs is just very excited to talk about Lorelink. But in any case, I lost my train of thought looking at that. That's awesome. You're fine. But basically, it's a campaign management tool. It's designed basically like what you see here. It's designed to provide a relatively straightforward, easy way to plan out your campaigns. Basically, take an adventure, whether it's a pre-made one or one that you're creating on your own, break it into distinct chunks, events, locations, characters, creatures, things like that. Basically build all of those out, then link them together in ways that make sense. So locations have events happen at them, which may feature characters or creatures that show up there. Or those creatures may have items that you want to store. Sessions are basically timelines. Are a series of events, and sessions are a great way of lumping all of that together. So one of the things we're going to talk about today, first thing I'm going to talk about is I'm going to start looking at how you take apart a typical basically Paizo's adventure, basically, especially their playtest adventures, which tend to be relatively straightforward, have a relatively straightforward setup. And so I'm going to talk about how I would break, how I am, in fact, breaking that up. Because I'm going to be using this to run, again, like I talked about, we're doing an actual play of this on Friday. So you can see, basically, you'll see, basically, this is how I'm breaking it up so that I can make, basically, I can make running that game just a little bit easier on me rather than Paizo has a lot of great information in their PDFs, but like, let me show you for an example here. Oop. Maybe? I clicked the PDF button and it did nothing. How dare you? I bet it's because of it's a... OBS has lost track of the PDF. There you go. Hey, you found it. Let me resize that so it actually fits on the screen. Whoop. There we go. But you can see, basically, this is the Cosmic Birthday. So right here, basically, inside the front cover of the book is the map of the dungeon for the first level. So, and then basically you keep going down and into the book, and then, okay, now you're actually into the first adventure here. You can actually see basically what A2 means when it's on that. But if I'm looking at this, I'm going to have to look at this. I'm going to have to look it up. I'm going to have to flip back. Basically scroll all the way back here, figure out where they are on the map. Then they're going to say they're going from here to here. Then I'm going to have to flip back again. Even if I'm running in a VTT, some of the VTTs will have some of that summary information that's available to you, but you're not going to have a lot of, basically may not have all the information. You won't have any of the notes or other stuff. All of it's kind of scattered around. So basically what LoreLink is for. And again, it's basically so what LoreLink is for is basically LoreLink is to help you take that. And so, for example, basically I've got the summary startup right here where I'm talking about basically the description of the adventure. The introduction is probably how I'm going to read it off at the start. And then I'm going to probably go through these events. Basically, I've got my chapter 1 summary, which is going to tell me that. I've got my 1A and 1B, which are going to be how those things together. I've got hazards, which basically are in Pathfinder and Starfinder Second Edition. Pardon me. Or how they do kind of traps and those other things. And so I can have all that information right there. So I'm going to break that off and I'm going to put it into here. So I'm going to use that as basically, okay, here's my look at what that looks like. And then I can back in one-way trip here. I can associate that hazard just like this. Great trigger, malfunctioning elevator. That's right there. Or if I wanted to, if I'm more and I want to keep it in the description, I can reference it here and be like events. And then malfunctioning elevator. And so now I have a link directly to it in my task. I could just say run malfunctioning elevator. Say that. And then when I'm running it, I've got that right there. So I can either go down here if I've got a bunch of stuff going on in here and I just want to read through it like here. I can right click, open it in a new tab, and pop. Basically now I've got access to it right there. So basically all of that basically helps keep all of that basically straightforward. If I'm running this on a time, basically if I want to run these things on a timeline, I can exit read-only mode, create a new timeline, and just do main storyline. Just like that. And I could go in here, and I can associate the events. I could start with that on 1. Then I can do one-way trip right there. Oops, put that in the wrong place. Okay, I can see it. I can edit that just as easily. That takes you to it. Oops. That's over. Edit. There we go. Okay. Now that's set up. Basically, I can keep doing that and list all the events right in a row. So if I want to, basically, rather than basically wondering in here, okay, does this happen before this? Like right now, I've put the numbers in front of them so that sorting works. I could leave those off and just use the timeline. Note the fact that when I come back to the main campaign, that timeline is right there as well. So basically, I've got all of that. Basically, all of those easily basically available to me without having to jump around. Had to have to figure out where goes where. Basically, all that is relatively straightforward and easily accessible. Locations obviously are another part, like we were just talking about that map. Basically, I am running right now in basically this is our development environment, which is hence the product in development. So you may see some weird bugs and other stuff. But it's basically images in the development environment, because I'm running through an emulator, don't work as well. But I can come in here and I have a map. So basically, if this was the map of that ghost levels or things like that, obviously there are areas on here I'm going to want to mark. And basically, so I've got A1, A2, A3. In fact, actually, let me just see if I can't grab. I'm in the development environment, so. Oh, I don't have anything in there. Right. Let's look for. To E. There's basically a random generic one. Thanks to whoever this is on. Oops. Yep. Right. I need to pull that up somewhere else. Nope. Ah! Jump scare. I tend to get lost into Reddit, so when I'm working, I tend to have that blocked off so I don't get sucked into reading through a bunch of stuff on Reddit. Helps me focus a little bit. So let's go ahead and create the ghost levels here as part of Absalom Station. And we can add map. I need to move that up slightly so I can see it. Oop. Ugh. Things resizing going all over the place. There we go. So let's save that. So now I've got the ghost levels. So if I go down to the map down here, so basically, you know how I was adding all of those things in? Basically, like this could be A2. So I can add a hotspot right in there. And basically, right now I don't have anything in there. You see, so when I click down there, it's like you've got those three. So if I wanted to quickly add a new location, like we'll just call this A1, because eventually we'll replace this with the actual what A1 is. Let's pull that up. There we go. A1 is corridor intersection. Thank you. 20. So basically we could take that. I've got. Oop, I need to remember to be breaking this off because PDFs are formatted weird. It's one of those things that we're looking into fixing, is the fact that PDFs by their nature format things with weird line breaks built into it. So that time I have a neat little tool which just strips line breaks. That will eventually get added into Lorelink just to save everybody time. So basically we've got so now I could click on that. If I say that's a 1, I save that, and now there's a dot right there. If I think it's in the wrong place, I'll be like, oh, that goes there, or maybe it goes over here, maybe it goes over there. Wherever it is, I can put it there, leave it there, and then when I'm actually running the adventure, clicking on it, takes me to A1. Basically, I've got that right there, and basically that way, now I don't have to jump back and forth between all those locations and things like that. If I want to go back to the map, I click back. Now I'm back there. Note the fact that basically this also has things like, basically, if I'm curious, because this takes place in Absalom Station, so if there's information I want to know about the station, like, what's its gravity? Basically, how big is it? What's its atmosphere? What's its day like, etc., etc. I dumped all that into a note from the parent. So now I don't have to go back to Absalom Station to look that information up when I'm looking at anything inside of Absalom Station. That note will always be there. So, actually I've got that. So let's go back to the child location there. Actually, what's actually created, what's actually associated as a child location. I think we accidentally didn't create it as a child location of the thing, so let's go to it really quickly. Go ahead and edit it. Yep, it's parented to the campaign world, so if I want to parent it to the ghost levels, simple as that. Now it's parented to the ghost levels. Now I can go back to the ghost levels. It's listed right there as a parent. Associated locations, basically if I want A1, A2, A3, hey Wolf Mom, A4, if I want all of those to basically be linked to it, because I'm like, okay, from A1 you can go to A3 and A4. Because sometimes the maps don't make a lot of sense. Sometimes you've got rooms like, basically this room here only connects to this room and to this room, and also connects to this room. So, and the numbering may not make sense. This may be A1, this may be A2, this may be A16. Who knows? Basically, this could be A7. And so, rather than having you to go, oh, okay, which one of these are, I can just associate the ones that I want with. Basically, I could say, okay, this is A3 and A16, and all those are accessible from this one. Therefore, when I'm looking at it, basically looking at it, the players are like, okay, which way we're going? I have a list of what rooms are available, which ways they can go from here. Especially useful when your players start making a lot of noise basically in combat, or basically searching or exploring, and you're like, okay, this just went off. I need to check the nearby rooms to see if there's stuff going on in those rooms that would be affected by that noise I just made. So basically it's a quick check of, oh, okay, yeah, basically there are 3 guards in that room. There are 2 guards in this room, but they're busy playing dice, and I say they're not going to notice. Cool. Basically, just moving on from there. Basically, setting up dungeons like this is basically, it just makes your life just a little bit easier, as opposed to having to deal with, oh gosh, I have to go flipping back in the PDF to figure out where things are. I've got the map right here, and I can just click on it, and I don't have to worry about it. The hierarchy system means I don't have to flip back up to parents to remember things. Because, like, let me show you a good example right here in this PDF right here. Pop that back open. So you've got this section here because basically you've got ceilings are 40 feet high and the doors and walls are made of steel unless otherwise stated. Most doors in the area are auto doors that basically open and shut in proximity to a technological sensor. Catwalks traverse the corridors at a height of 20 feet with industrial. So all of this stuff is just here under ghost levels. It's found nowhere else in the thing. And so I'm going to grab that text. I'm going to flip back to Lorelink. I'm going to format it so it's not terrible looking. And then I'm going to go to backup, details. Basically that child description. I'm going to save that. And now that that's in there, now when your players are like, oh hey, middle of a combat, they're like, we want to jump up to the ceiling, or how high is the ceiling? Basically we want to bust down this door. What's it like? Okay, I've got all of that right there. Basically, it's all right there. Basically, for anything that's under ghost levels, it's going to have that. Basically, that note from the parent right there, and I don't have to sit there and worry about, oh gosh, where is basically where was that brief little paragraph in this PDF? Yeah, party's making noise. Never. Basically, where is it in this PDF? It's somewhere. Basically, it's somewhere in here, I know, because someone will invariably ask you when you are 16 pages in, 16 rooms in, and you're like, hang on, it's back here somewhere. Nope, just pop it open, look at the text, you got the information, keep going. All right. And so a lot of what you're doing in terms of setting up basically an adventure like this is you're going to take a lot of the locations, you're going to look at it, you're going to come through here and you're going to break it down kind of room by room, going through and be like, okay, A1, okay, here's the corridor intersection. Okay, I've got these creatures here. Okay, that means I need to create these creatures. What are they? Brief malfunctioning maintenance robots. Okay, where are the malfunctioning maintenance robots? Sometimes they're in the book. Sometimes they're in Quentin Adventures. Sometimes they're in Bestiary or basically a Monster Core or however basically Starfinder chooses to call their main books. I'm sure they've announced it at this point. But basically, and so I don't basically if it's a creature which is in an Archives of Nethys book. So let's go ahead and create a creature really quickly. We'll call this. That's not how you spell maintenance, but you know that's what autocorrect is for. Except when you spell things so badly, autocorrect just kind of shrugs at you and says, "What are you trying to do?" Maintenance. I'm not spelling that right. I know it. Thank you. There we go. Watch me on slightly sick brain trying to figure things out. Great. Okay, I'm going to list what creature they are. Okay, the creature -1. Now, basically, this one has a description right here in the book, and so I can pull it from the book. And basically, after doing some quick formatting, make sure it doesn't explode. I paste it in. Exciting cutting and pasting action. Seen only here, live, on the Lore Link channel. Boom. Put that thing in. Probably don't need that. That's information which is going to be in the thing. So let's go ahead and bold those. Oop. Calm down. It's being stubborn. Right. Okay, so I can go through. Well, now you're like, oh yeah, you want me to do that? I could do that. So I can pull those out. Let's pull out the important things, like these things. Make them slightly bigger. Because those are always the things you're looking for whenever you're looking up these monsters. Are like, hey, what is their X or Y? Hey, guess what? They're robots. They have a list of immunities. They also need electricity, being robot. Speed, melee, ranged, damage. Okay. So I can save that, and basically I can use that. Basically I could then add it to this encounter. Just feel like associate game object. Boom, malfunctioning manager of that. Associate that thing. Now it's there. I could then creatures. Say that there. So now I have that number there. I have that link. I have this link down here, so I can take a quick look at the room and see what all is in it. If I wanted to, basically, it's got that thing about the commercial flashlight with the battery. I could put that in there as well. I could quickly add. Quickly add an item. Commercial flashlight. Betting flashlights are at item 0. And basically, the other thing you can do. I'm going to pull up the flashlight, portable light. There we go. Switch your computer. Be right back. Okay, see you in a bit, Wolfman. Okay. Basically, as a description, I could paste in the description, basically, of the item. Or, it's an item, basically, this is an item that exists, basically, as part of their SRD. Therefore, I could just include a link to it, right there. And now, I can associate that game object. Commercial flashlight. I could update this. Basically, I've got all of that right there. And basically now when I go to commercial flashlight, I've got that link right there. And I actually want to make it a... Oops, let me put that back. I can make it an actual link. Right there. And now when I'm looking at this, that link is right there. I can right click, open, and I can go to the Archives Methods page. We've also, basically, one of the things we're working on and developing is that basically that same mention system you saw me reference earlier also has sections for rules references. So if this was a, say, a Pathfinder. Oh, I'm in test. Test doesn't have that. That's great. I'm running on an emulated system, so the only data that's in here is the data that I actually have put into it. I haven't loaded the Pathfinder rules data in here. But we have Pathfinder in there, and so you could just search for anything in the Pathfinder core rulebook. And it will automatically create the link and link you to, say, Archives of Nethys. We also have things like Blades in the Dark has an SRD, which is available. The basic role-playing system for Chaosium is publicly available, and so we have an index of that. Fate has an index as well. So those challenging and tricky rule situations and things like that, all of those can be basically just looked up and easily put in as a link. Welcome back. So, all that can easily be put in basically as a link, so it's easily available. Let's go ahead and save that. Boop. So all that basically now I have that really easily. I can look at that location. I could see that location and things like that right there. If I wanted to expand this, basically this encounter with the creatures out, I could make it an event. Like, I could make an event. Chanting robots. And then I could put all that information there and expand on this, maybe get more of a script, maybe add some information to it if I want to. So now I've got that in, basically now I've got that event right there. I can associate that with the location. A1, corridor intersection. Simple as that. And so now I've got that associated, so I can be like, oh, okay. And then if I go to the location, basically if I come down here, location used by, I can see it's used in this event. So makes it easy to keep track of, makes it easy to keep track of what location is used where, what events are associated with what locations. Basically just an easy compatibility, but an easy way of keeping track of everything and where everything is. So, notes are everywhere, and notes are really easy ways. And basically, if you're wanting to keep track of what your players have done or what your players are doing, basically you can just quickly at any point you can add I can either come down here to note, or if I'm up here, there's this note button that's on every page. Boom, really easy to just add a note. We'll talk more about what this means or what this is leading to here in a second. But I could have basically like players have basically about that. Boom. Whoop. Test. Oh, there we go. Test was being slow. Okay. And I can have that right there. And I've got that note easy to keep track of what's going on. And then lastly, all of that, basically once it actually comes time for me to run everything, I'm just going to create a new session. And I'm going to be like, okay, here's our session 1. Basically, maybe I'll have an image associated with it, maybe I won't. Ghost levels. If I want more of a description of what goes on, I could do that. But the big thing that the sessions are is our sessions. Okay. Pardon me. So this doesn't blow out the microphone. Let me mute this really quickly. That's the right button. Now I'm audible again. Okay, cool. All right, so basically the session is your kind of custom resting place where everything is located. So you've got everything from your, basically all your events, all your locations, all your game objects. All of those are going to be, basically you can store in here. So if you're like, okay, here's what I think these players are going to get to. I think they're going to meet this guy. Let's see what else we got. They're also going to, they're going to go there. And I think they're going to visit the following locations. I think they're going to visit the ghost levels. And they'll probably get into the first corridor. There we go. Okay. Now you can see I've got those right there. Those events are there. Those locations are there. So all of that is straightforward and easy, basically easy to look at. Basically, I can mark which ones they've done as complete. And I can basically, so I can be like, okay, yeah, they did they did that. I can sort this by name. Basically, they completed that one. They went into the ghost levels. They went here. Cool. If any of these, if they haven't finished them, I can select all the incomplete ones, and then I can copy and move them to new sessions. So basically, when session 2 comes around, if they're like, there's a bunch of stuff I had planned for session 1 that they just didn't get to, either because of the fact that they went left, and then that's because when I was playing on them going right, or just the fact that combat took longer than expected, or they had a much deeper conversation with an NPC than you expected, or just life came up and session got cut short. Things happen. Basically, this just lets you pick up from where you left off, and now basically if I copy the things off they didn't do, I can easily keep track of. Basically, this session then becomes a record of what did happen during session 1. And now when I go back, I don't have to go, oh gosh, what did they accomplish in session 1? What didn't they accomplish? I've already got to start. Basically, I know what they did in session 1. I've marked it off as completed. And I know what I was thinking they're going to get to in session 2 because I moved it to a session 2. Or maybe I removed it off of here, whatever. Basically, you could also include game objects as well, like basically that NPC they're talking to. You could associate that. Basically, now they're in there as well. Basically, notes are obviously going to be your easy way of basically keeping track of any detailed information that you want to add to a session, like things that happen at a session, things you're thinking about for next session, however that works. You can even associate an interval. An interval is a chunk of the timeline. So if you're like, okay, here is what session 1 covered on the main story timeline, it covered this. And that could be useful for 2 reasons. One, basically it's another visual way of representing, okay, basically they went from point A to point B on the timeline, they covered these events. Also, if you have a timeline which has multiple events on it that are going on simultaneously, like there are plans within plans within plans, basically you're running a complicated game of intrigue and things like that, there's stuff going on in the background that the players don't know about. Your timeline, you can associate your timeline, so you can be like, okay, this is what the players got through in terms of basically the events. I know they went from this point to this point, but that means the fact that basically when I look at it, okay, the following things happen in the background during this session. Okay, so now when I'm planning for the next session, I can be like, oh, okay, these people have made their plots. These people have put this into motion. For example, Cosmic Birthday basically does have a stuff going on in the background that players aren't aware about that's leading up to something big happening that basically maybe you want to, basically if you're wanting to basically drop hints or drop clues over things escalating in the background, maybe you're wanting to keep track of like, okay, this is starting to happen more often. This is reaching a head. If the players then choose to explore it, you're not stopped. You're not going, wait, okay, where are they in terms of my main storyline? Are they in the past? Has that event happened yet? Let me look. Oh, I got my timeline. I can tell exactly where they are, what events have happened, what events haven't happened. And this interview gives me a good chunk of, okay, this is what happened on the session. So all of this good. So that is the basic way that I would set up. Basically, transportation is going to be your ships and things like that. Villains are going to be your overarching things. Tags are not as necessary in a kind of straightforward thing like this, but if I'm running and I want to keep track of, so these people are part of this Starfinder Society, these people are part of this cult, etc., etc. I'm wanting to keep track of what is what. The tags let me add an extra layer of characterization on top of things, so that basically you don't have to rely just on what we've broken things into. You can be like, oh, okay, the following things are members of this group or this society, or belong to this. So that tag can go on locations, they can go on vehicles, they can go on whatever, basically, so that you know what's going on throughout everything. Okay, so basically, one thing which I've been we talked about basically in terms of the reason why I am running this in the test mode is that I wanted to show off one of our newer features that we're adding to Lore Link here shortly. This will be available to anyone who is at a tier above World Tier. World Tier is our free tier, which, by the way, basically, if any of the stuff you looked at has seemed interesting, everything in here can be done, with the exception of the maps and highlighting, basically and hotspotting the maps, can be done on a world tier. The only restriction is you have limited space for images, and you have basically you have a limited number of campaigns. 2. I'm moving around too much. My camera's freaking out. You have two items for basically 2 campaigns you can run. But basically, if you subscribe at the higher tiers, the paid tiers, which will be coming soonish, we're working out the final details on those as we speak. That'll probably be within the next month or so. Gen Con has taken a lot of it because there's been a lot going on, and so we're a little behind schedule, but we're catching up. One of the big features is basically we're adding the ability to share your campaign with your players. Soon, TM. Yep. So what does that involve? July and August are a lot around here for sure. Yeah. So basically right down here in the player section, we've got player users. Basically, I've got a link that I can share with player users. It's safe for me to share this link because you can't get access to it because it's running in emulator mode on my computer. So typing that into your computer will do you no good. But if I give this code and I take this and I go, okay, time for me to switch to a different window because this one, so now I'm in incognito mode. Whoop. You can see where I got the map from. I'm in a different one. How many incognito windows do I have? 1 second. Okay, there we go. That's the correct one. Okay, so basically this user already has it, so let's go ahead and log out as this user. But basically because I'm running in emulator mode, I can just create a new account. Fake one using Google. Look at this behind the scene dev stuff. In case you're curious, one of the advantages to basically running in an emulator, basically Firebase things, I could just create a new user and just be like, yeah, this is a valid user of Google. Cool. And now it's created it. So basically I can create my first campaign, or I've got a list of campaigns here. So if I take that link, which I was just showing, that's the wrong one. Whoop, let me pull it. I can accept this invite. And basically I've got the campaign image right there. Basically it's got a name. It's got basically it says who owns the campaign. And I can give my name and a contact email. Contact email is optional. Then I can accept this invite. So I call myself test player. We call test.player at example.com. This is a fake email. Okay. It's going to basically go through and it's going to process that. While it's processing that in the background, let me come back here. So basically in terms of setup, basically like you can see the campaign image is something you can set up. Your name is something you can set up. You don't get to edit the link. The link gets generated. You can expire the, basically have it. So basically it's only good for a week, for a day. It defaults to 5 years in the future. Which should be enough for most campaigns. I mean, I know I've had some campaigns that have run that long. Of course, basically the big thing you're worrying about when you're sharing your stuff with others is the internet is a weird place. And so if you're sharing it with friends, sure, you don't need approval. The only people you're giving this link to are the people who are going to have it. But if you're sharing this link on a forum or on a Discord server or something like that, you could turn requires approval on. And that means that you will have to come into when you're done. Basically, you can see this player has come in and they're already, basically, if I look at it, basically, I can assign them a character. I don't have any players, so it's not going to give me any characters. But basically, if they this required approval, I would have a checkbox. Basically, I would have a toggle where I could approve that player. You'll have the ability to remove players from campaigns. That is basically complete, but not available in this dev section where we are. I can always remove the sharing link at any time, which removes that completely. So if I need to, if somehow the link I've created gets out into the wild, I can remove that link and just be like, nope, that link doesn't exist, doesn't work anymore, create a new one, basically, and then basically if I really need to, require approval. So again, basically the big thing that basically the reason why this is kind of in development for a bit, because player sharing isn't too difficult from a standpoint of you're just sharing things with people on the web. It's a website. Anyone could go into the website, but basically player security is important, especially on the internet. Basically making sure. Basically, we talk a lot about accessibility. There's a lot of that which has to do with how people basically access it. It's also the idea of making sure that this is a safe space. Basically, we have a very strict policy, basically in terms of what is allowed and what isn't allowed. If you've joined our Discord at any point, basically you've gone through. We've got a list of things we tolerate and things we absolutely do not tolerate. And so we want you to be able to enforce that in your campaigns. If someone gets a hold of it and starts posting nasty things, you can boot them. The chat rules here too. Yep. Basically, you can boot them. Basically, if it gets out, you should be able to secure it. Basically, players will only have access to that. Basically, also, players will only have access to things that you give them access to. So, let's go back to the player we just came from. So, basically, I've got the campaign up, and I have access to it. You can tell it's one of my game ones because I'm a player because it's got the die symbol on it. Any ones I've created basically have active, draft, or archived. So if I click on it, I got that basically, I'm in here, but I can't see the timeline. I can tell that there are items on the timeline, but I can't see what they are. I've got these details which are set up here, and if I look through things, I've got one event that I can see. We'll see my basically locations. I can see a couple things, but all that ghost level stuff I just created isn't visible. Nothing in characters, nothing in creatures. Basically, we had those things back in there. But basically the session we created isn't visible. That is because by default in LoreLink, whenever you create something, when we flip back, I'm going to be doing a lot of this flipping back and forth. So, for example, basically, whenever I create something, if I go down to the bottom here in details, player visibility will always default to hidden. If you are currently basically a user in LoreLink, all of your stuff that you have created, basically day one that we released this feature, you decide to take one of your existing campaigns and put it basically and share the link to it. By default, everything you have created up until this point will remain hidden. Basically, even though that feature wasn't available, basically we default to private. You have to go in and you have to say, I want to share these things. That means you can put all your work you want to into your campaign, share it, and then make sure that you control exactly what players have access to when you want them to have access to it. So, let's start with basically, so you've got this meeting with basically Jules, right, basically, actually, let me rewind a little bit. First thing that this is going to be useful for, especially in a sci-fi type setting, is the fact that, so, you've got a lot of stuff in a sci-fi setting. If you're playing a fantasy setting, if I say elf or dwarf or gnome or sword or basically shield or basically a lot of those things, you have a mental image of them from Lord of the Rings movies. You have a mental image of them from years and years of basically D&D and things like that, and fantasy movies and cartoons and things like that. Most of the time, you're going to have a basic idea. And of course, obviously, different game systems have different versions of them, but a lot of times you're relatively close. But something like Starfinder, you're going to be like, okay, guys, one of your playable race choices are the Vesk or the Barathu. And most people are going to be like, the who and the what? And you'll be like, sentient lizards. And you'll be like, okay. And then you'll mention it again in the campaign, like, oh, that's a Vesk. And the adventurers will make some assumptions, basically, that... And your characters basically obviously know what a Vesk is, because your characters have basically lived in this world and have interacted with it. And so you want to make sure that your players have access to these things so that they can take a look at them, so they don't have to stop the game and be like, what are the Vesk again? So I've got an entry here under creatures for Vesk. I can go into here. I can move this to player visibility. We've got three options. Existence only, we'll talk about in a bit. And then fully visible, if I want to basically, nothing in here is a secret. So I'm going to save that as fully visible. Now if I flip back to the user, basically the player, if I go to creatures, Now that VESC shows up, I can now access that VESC. Note that I cannot edit this VESC. I can put notes on it, but I can't edit anything. Basically anything in here. So now I've got this. Basically, I've got the summary and all that stuff. So when I'm playing the game, and basically either before we play the game, and basically you're looking at different races, or you're deciding, oh, what do I want to play? What are the other players playing? Basically, this gives you a quick place to come look at while you're playing it. So basically, you don't have to go, oh, what are the VESC again? Oh, okay. Basically, you've got access to the VESC right here. And as a GM, you could also link to, basically, you could send your players a link to the VESC creatures. You could go to it, you could save, basically, at that point. You can be like, okay, there it is. And you could say, like, here's the VESC, here's your reminder what the VESC are. Other things you could do, characters. You don't have anything in characters currently. But after meeting a character, maybe you want to, like, this adventure starts off with this guy. After you meet him, maybe you'll be like, okay, now that the players have met him, he's fully visible. Boom. And now, oops, basically now he pops up. He's right there. And now I can see him. And now I have information about him, and the players can make notes over who he is, but basically what our interactions with them are, etc., etc. All of that is right there. Now, there may become times when basically you're like, I just want the players know about this, but they don't really know too much about it. I've got a bunch of information in there that I don't want them to know about yet. I just want the players to know that this character exists. Okay, so in that case, close that. Basically flip back to this. Rather than fully visible, I can switch to existence only. And so basically an example of that, but basically let me actually go to a better example of that. Like, for example, there's a malfunctioning elevator hazard. I may not want them to know all of this complicated details about how the trap works and all of that. But I may want them to remember that the event happened. I want them basically to be like, oh yeah, we dealt with a malfunctioning elevator. So what that means I'm going to do is I'm going to make this elevator existence only. So basically it's marked as existence only. I'm going to save it as existence only. Then I'm going to flip back to the other view. If I go to events, basically, and if I look at that event now, all I can see is the name and the short description. If I had an image associated with it, that image would show up here. I don't have one yet, so it doesn't. Basically, it doesn't show up. But they can see that it exists. Basically, if I want an example of basically, let's make Absalom Station existence only. I don't want them to see all the information about Absalom Station. So if I switch Absalom Station to existence only, cool. Excuse me. I've got the image. I've got basically the read aloud text, which is just what I told the players about the location, and they've got a picture of what it looks like. That's it. That's all they have access to. They don't have access to all the secret information that I want to keep from them. I have notes I can make visible to the players if I want them to know information, but I don't want to basically reveal all my description. I could post a note on it that the players can see. Again, that comes back to that is secret from players. Basically toggle. Basically, it'll actually, right now it says is secret to players. Long term, it'll become is visible to players because, again, by default, it will be unchecked, and by default, it will basically any notes you create will not be visible to players. You'll have to be like, yes, I want this note to be visible to the players. By default, any notes that the players make will basically during this first iteration of it, all notes from players will always be visible. But eventually, at some point way down in the future, obviously, we will understand players will want to do secret notes just to the GM, etc., etc. That's beyond the scope of this first blush. The first blush is let's create a system that lets the GM share information with the player, so that basically again, the big reason why we did lore link and all of that is so that basically we're reducing time at the table, which is spent looking up notes. And we're bringing that, basically, GMs aren't the only ones who end up doing that. Like I talked about with the VESC. Oh, what are the VESC again? Let me go look up on Archives of Nethys or whatever. Oh, wait, there's basically, boom, it's right here. And basically one of the most interesting, basically long-term features is, hey, remember those sessions I talked about? If I go back to the sessions in the GM's perspective, I've got the session. I can make the session visible to the players. Now, if I make the session visible to the players, the only items the players can see in the session are items that I have made visible. Basically, either fully visible or partially visible, basically either or just existence only. All those items will appear in here. The ones which are not listed, basically not visible to them, will still be hidden. Like, for example, one-way trip, I believe, is still hidden. Let's double check. Yeah, one-way trip is hidden. Events. But meeting, I believe meeting, basically we'll say we've got that. I'm going to make that existence only, because I don't want them to see all the information they could have gotten out of the contact. So now if I make this session fully visible, I add that. Now I switch back to player view. Now you can see the fact that that session is now popped up on their list. They could go in. Note that the only event that they can see is the one which is visible to them. And basically the only object they can see is the one that's visible to them. And so if I click on that, again, that's just an existence only. So all they can see is the name and the short description. They can't see all of it. If I wanted to include more information about it, I could. Basically, I could make that. I can make the description more visible, or I could add notes. And basically those are visible to the players. So now this session has become my guide, basically the thing I can send to my players before the next session, before session 2, to be like, hey guys, here's what happened in session 1. Here are the things you did. Here are the people you met. Basically, I send that out with the email reminding them, hey, we're meeting this Friday. Basically, someone's bringing pizza, whatever. We're meeting online, etc., etc. I send them that, and I can basically they can look at it. They can be like, oh, that's right, we met this guy. Here's the guy we met. Here's some items we got, etc., etc. All that stuff is right here in the session. I don't have to go through and remind them. I may still do a quick summary at the start of the at the start of the session, but it's less. I can spend a little bit less time on that. I don't have to go through and go, what did we talk to them about? Basically, they have it right there. The players basically can spend a little bit less time digging through their notes, trying to remember exactly what happens. Some players want to journal. Basically, they can still do that, but this provides another place where they can keep it. They can access this on their phones. They can access this on their tablets, on their PCs, wherever. And they can have this up during the game and just be like, cool, okay, that's what happened last time. We met with this guy, and oh, that's right, my character didn't like the way that they did X or Y, and I want to keep track of that, so that I can basically make note of that. Basically, I can interact with them, and now that information hasn't been lost. I have that information, and basically the GM has that information. I can make the existence of the session, basically do existence only on the session, and basically that won't show all the things that I have planned for the session. Except maybe if I wanted to put things in there to remind them, oh hey, this session we're doing this, I could put those in there. But I basically all the description and all my notes and all my things over what's going to happen, they don't have to see. And again, basically remember that basically we talked about basically those notes at the bottom. Basically, since I made this one visible, they can see that one on the timeline. We may change that so that basically right now it's showing 1. Which basically we probably should be able to see that there are 16 things in it. We'll fix that. Locations, basically hierarchy-wise, right now, in terms of how hierarchy works, if you hide a location, all of its children are hidden on the hierarchy, even if you choose to make one of the lower levels visible. for some reason you decide to do that, the hierarchy won't show that. The list will. In case you're wondering, the list will still show it. So don't make anything visible that you don't want your players to see. Even though it won't show up in the hierarchy, they can still get access to it. So, basically, some of these things we will work with and we'll work out and things like that. Basically, as we wrap up development on this feature. But we wanted to get this out here to show you, hey, here it is. Here's what's coming. Basically, give us feedback. Basically, we'll post this video, comment on the YouTube channel. All those exciting things. So, that's 6:15, which means it's about time for me to start wrapping up. Nothing else, just to save my voice, so I have one for Friday. So again, this is a feature which is it is a paid tier feature. And by paid tier feature, I mean that in order to invite players to your campaign, you need to be a paid tier subscriber. World tier, basically all that stuff I talked about at the beginning with creating locations, creating events, linking those locations, building out sessions, etc., etc. All that is available at the world tier. The only thing which isn't available, which is paid tier only, is hotspots on maps, is a paid tier only. But outside of that, all of that stuff you can do in basically in the free tier, which basically, as a note, the free tier is available now. Basically, you saw me create that account just like that, and basically it automatically logged me. Basically, it logged me in, and it says, great, here's your access. That is the same experience if you go to our website. You go to any of the links, basically, whether the link in the chats, basically the Get Started link, or any of those links, you will be able to basically sign up right now for the world tier. If you want to get if you want to get notified about cool things when you're on that Get Started page, you can in fact just basically there's also a newsletter sign up. Their newsletter is basically how we communicate cool things which are going on within the next which have happened over the last month and are going to happen in the next month. So all of that stuff is available on there. Basically, if you're like, hey, basically, I want to know about that information, but I'm fine with getting it in a digest version. I just want it once a month. Cool. Basically, you got that. If you're the braver or foolhardy sort and you prefer to deal with social media, we have some of our social media accounts. We have we have the Blue Sky, we have Instagram, we have Facebook. We have the ones which are basically we're willing to put our toes into and not feel like coming out dirty from having interacted with. So if you wanted that, give those a follow, and basically you'll get information like, oh, hey, we're going live with this. It basically gives us there's a surprise stream that shows up. All that stuff can basically it can be found on the social media. The newsletters will talk about it as well. Obviously, if you're interested in videos, if you follow us here on Twitch, you'll get a notification that, hey, that Lore Link group is going live again. You can also subscribe to us here if you feel like you've enjoyed what we're talking about, you enjoyed our insights talking about, you enjoy our actual plays. We appreciate it. If you want to throw us one of those Amazon gaming things you're not using, basically if you have an Amazon Prime account, Amazon basically lets you take some of Jeff Bezos' money and give it to any streamer you like. So basically we'd be honored to accept that if you do that. We have our YouTube channel, which if you've wanted to check back on this video later, if you're like, hey, how exactly does this stuff work? Basically, you can check that YouTube channel out. Not only will we have these videos on there, we'll have the actual play video will be hosted on there. And if you want to see basically tutorial videos and things like that, that will be available. Those will basically be on there as well for more. When we get this feature comes live, there'll be a deeper dive tutorial video on there. So basically talking about videos and things like that, this Friday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Basically, this adventure I have been talking about, basically a cosmic birthday, a Starfinder Second Edition Playtest adventure, will be run by the Lore Link players live here on stream. So you can see them run through all the chaos, which I will be planning, and you'll be able to see me using Lorelink. Basically, it's setting things up, basically have things available, and if everything goes well, basically we'll be able to have some of those player sharing features available as well. And so you'll be able to see some, basically, we may be able to do some Twitch trickery, and things like that to see, basically all of the, my brain just blanked out because I'm being thrown shade at. Basically Twitch trickery, so you can watch our stream, and then basically maybe one of our other players will be able to co-stream, so you can see the fact 1 p.m. not 12:30. Okay, 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That's why it's important to follow the channel, and if you do that, you'll be able to see, basically know exactly when we go live, because we'll say 1 p.m. and then life will happen, and the starting soon screen may not get put up until 1:05. We'll see. Yeah, 12:30 is the call time, not the go live time. Correct. But basically, so you'll be able to see them go through, see me using Lorelink, and possibly also see them using the player sharing feature to look up information and things like that while they are playing. All that to say, I think basically social media, newsletter, basically actual play streams. Sign up for a free account. Think I've covered everything. I'm a little early on time, but that's fine. It gives me a couple seconds to perhaps maybe this could catch my breath before posting some character information for our players who apparently want some for some weird reason. All right. So all that to say, thank you all for watching. Appreciate having you here. And we will see you this Friday. Catch you later. Bye.